This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you for joining the City of Kingston's Common Council at our Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 8th. My name is Andrea Schott, the Council President and organizer for our virtual meetings. Before we begin our meeting, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines to help us navigate the system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that members of the public and press remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. As organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. Council members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a council member or staff wishes to speak, they will raise their hands. The chairperson will call on them before they speak by starting their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the city's website at a later date. Although we will not have public speaking tonight, you could submit written comments to the City of Kingston Clerk, Elisa Tinty, at emtinty@kingston-ny.gov or by dropping them off at the drop box located outside the side door of City Hall. We also encourage you to reach out to committee chairs or your ward's representative at any time. If you have any audio issues, send a text message to the following number, 845-594-6120. I will repeat this number again, but be aware that phone calls will not be answered during the meeting. The number to text is 845-594-6120. As the organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance Chair Doug Coop, committee members Rennie Scott Childress, Tony Davis, Steve Shabbat. Non-voting council members we don't have any, and city staff, Corp Counsel Kevin Bryant, City Clerk Lisa Tinty, Comptroller John Toohey. Thank you for your patience with our technical difficulty. And on behalf of the Common Council, I wish you and your family good health. I now turn the floor over to Chairman Doug Coop.
Doug, you're on mute.
Good evening, it's Douglas Coop, Chairman of the Finance Committee. It's now 6:52 and we'll get started belatedly. We have two items on the agenda. Number one, new business is a budget transfer for the city to restore New York Round 4. This is and John, I have a question on this for you. John Toohey. John Toohey?
Oh, that's John. Go ahead, Doug.
Hi, John. This is the grant of $500,000 for Restore New York 4 grant in the amount of $500,000. The budget transfer is to increase $500,000 into economic development. Where's that money coming from?
Community grant.
This is a grant, Doug. I should note though that the transfer should only be for $195,000. If you recall at the special finance meeting, we handled the $305,000 REPCO piece. That is we're a pass through on that, and since that work was done in 2019, those monies will be recorded as a 2019 revenue and expenditure. So what's left is the $195,000 piece for the renovations.
So we're only talking about $195,000.
Of the $500,000 grant, that's correct.
Okay, so this committee report is not correct then, right?
Those numbers should be struck and it should be marked as $195,000.
All right.
On both sides.
Where is that money residing now? This was from a grant from 2018.
we're a pass-through, so it's still with the granting agency.
Oh, we have not received it yet.
Correct. Right.
So we're gonna get it from the granting agency and put it into 6989, the New York State grant,
Correct.
right? And then they will transfer it into the contracted services for the renovation of these 3 properties, et cetera, correct? Okay. And no financial impact to the city. So we have not received the money yet.
No, we haven't.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any problem with this. Yes, Tony. Tony
So again,
Davis.
Doug, this is Tony Davis and Ward 6. Again, so this money is going to be helped to renovate and rehabilitate properties on Cedar Street, 3 vacant properties and 2 vacant properties on Franklin Street and 1 on Van Dusen Street. That'll become available for income eligible first-time homeowners. So this is a worthy project, and that should be and move forward.
Yeah. Steve, you have a comment? Steve, Steve, unmute. Thank you. Steve, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification for me. We don't have this money yet, right? That's what it sounds like to me. How can we be transferring funds we don't have?
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
understand.
Yeah, I'm not clear on this either. Thank you, Steve. John, that's a good question. We don't have the money yet, so how do we transfer money we don't have? I think that's what you're asking, right, Steve?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Doug, if I may, it's John Toohey.
Yes. John Toohey, please.
It's my understanding that the grant has been awarded, and typically you have to expend the money to be reimbursed. So in this case, to be able to expend the money, you have to have the money appropriated in the budget.
Okay, so this resolution is then to appropriate the money in the budget.
Right. It's not necessarily about physically transferring money. It's about authorizing the expenditure of costs that will be reimbursed through a grant. But once again, you have to have the authorization in your budget before you can spend it. This is essentially what we do on every grant.
But do we have to, we're going to spend the money before we get the grant?
No, we have the grant. We just don't have the actual cash.
Well, that's what I mean. We don't have the, we're going to spend the money before we have the cash?
Right. Very few. This is John, just so for clarification for everyone out there. Exceptionally few grants work on a basis where they advance you the money. Virtually every grant that we deal with, particularly at the state and federal level, are reimbursement type grants.
Right. Yeah. Steve Shabbat.
Steve Shabbat. So shouldn't the committee report really specify that? I'm a little uncomfortable with the words transfer when we're not really transferring it. And if I understand correctly, when we do get the money, then we'll transfer it into the appropriate account. Could we make the committee report a little clearer with that?
Steve, I have the same confusion as you do. Usually a committee report says increase on one line and decrease on the other. Here we're increasing on both lines.
Yeah, this is John again. Normally it would say from the New York State grant into the contracted services.
Can we make that, this is Andrea Schott, can we make that change on the committee report before we send it out to get signed?
What change are you saying, Andrea?
the one that, I'm not looking at it right in front of me, but let me pull it up. What John just said is have it from the grant, or from the grant, New York State grant, to the contracted services. Was that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, the top line would be a from, and the second line would be the to.
Instead
Yeah.
of 2 increases, the first increase would change that word to from, and the second
From.
increase on the bottom line would change it to 2. So it'd be
Correct.
from NYS grants to.
For 195,000.
Yeah.
And then
So
also
we're
change it to
saying
195.
we're going to go from 6989-3389, which is New York State grant, to 6989-5301 contracted services. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
For
so I will change that.
$195,000.
We will change that from and to.
And change the dollar figure.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Tony. It's $195,000. I think, do we all agree this now is a little clearer? It's clearer in my mind. The only thing that's still not clear, we don't have the cash yet.
But that's normal for grants, as Andrea shot. That's typical for grants,
Right.
is it gets reimbursed. So that's nothing, that's just
Got
how
it, yeah,
works.
yeah. But
We
do
awarded
we
the
have,
grant in 2018. We got to show that we're spending the funds, that we've spent this funds, and then we're going to get reimbursed for it. That's what I see it as.
yeah, we'll be reimbursed for it. So we're going to spend money on contracted services before we get the grant, correct, John?
Yes, that's correct.
And where does that cash come from? Come out of general fund or something?
Correct. And when the money comes back, it goes back into it.
General fund.
Correct.
Okay, so out of the general fund to get the work done and then reimbursed into the general fund from the New York State grant.
Correct.
Okay, I think we got it now, right?
Can I just clarify? Sorry,
Okay.
can I clarify one thing?
Yes, Andrea Shutt?
That we do have the grant, we just don't have the money.
Right,
from the
right.
grant. So
We
we're
have the
not
money,
waiting
but not
for-
the cash.
Exactly. So I just wanted to clarify that the grant, we do have the grant, the
Right.
money will just come as a reimbursement.
Right. In other words, it's on our books, we have it, but the cash is another story. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think we could ask for a motion on this now.
Motion.
Okay, motion from Steve Shabbat. A second. Randy Scott Childress. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 1, 2, 3, 4. Why only 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Michelle is missing. And no one's sitting in for Michelle. We should have clarified that. Okay, so this is a 4-0 vote. Oh, okay, Elisa? Okay, all right. So that's that one, right? Let's move on to old business. This involves budget transfer modification to the charging station grant. I don't understand why this is on the agenda. Wasn't this resolution number 64 that we passed last night?
Yeah, it looks similar.
Well, why is it different? John?
Doug, I had the same thought when I looked at it. And then I looked at, I believe these are different grants, similar grants, but different grants. You want to verify the totals?
Well, the dollar figures are the same. What are you saying that's different about this? Because I thought we passed this last night. You're muted, John. John, you're muted. John, you are, yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that. There's been a few that passed through. There was one that came through at the same time frame that was the same. Are these dollar amounts all exactly the same?
Yeah.
If it's dated in February, then strike it.
I thought the one last night was $350,000. This one's 305,000, isn't it?
I think we're talking about, we're talking about Julie's now. The last one was Brenna's.
I mean, this is word for word for the committee report that we passed last night. I checked it line by line. I still don't see the difference.
I'm checking it again. So there was a error. This somehow got on the Laws and Rules Committee for next week. Alderman Ventura Morel noticed it, that it shouldn't be on because I had signed this to Finance. So we moved this to Finance today, but I'm now rechecking it to see if it was just, it shouldn't have been on this month at all. So there was a mistake. Perhaps it was that it shouldn't have been on at all. So I'm going to double check it right now. What resolution did you say it was yesterday?
It was number 79.
79.
And we passed that last night. $305,000. That's my parrot in the background, if you're wondering.
Doug, it's
Yeah.
John again. Which are you're saying that which one is duplicate? The first item on the agenda or the second?
The second item on the old business.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It was resolution 64 that we passed last night. And so I don't see why it's on the agenda tonight.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah, sorry.
I think it's a mistake.
I do too. Kevin, you're muted.
He's disagreeing.
Kevin, you're muted.
Question. Was there a question?
No, you seem to be speaking, but you were muted.
I'm sorry. I was talking to my daughter. Forgive me.
Okay. All right. So we agree this is it's a non-agenda item.
Correct. They shouldn't have been on the agenda today.
John Tui,
What resolution number was it from last night?
number 64.
64. I'm just looking at it.
And from what I can see, it's word for word identical. These were for the three
Yes.
projects, the EV charging station, the modifications at the beach and pool, and something at City Hall. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's the same. It should be struck.
Okay.
No, I
So,
apologize. I didn't check. When I was told to put it on this morning, I didn't check it. I just moved it from Laws and Rules. I didn't double check it to see that it had
Yeah,
been
because
on.
we noticed it was on Laws and Rules and we wanted to quickly do it, so we didn't double check it. So
Okay.
it's an honest mistake. I'll
Yeah,
take
we-
credit for the mistake. Move on. Now you're done with the finance meeting.
All right. Okay, at least we understand it now. Okay.
John has to give it.
I asked Elisa to move it on there, but I did not read it through. I just saw my handwriting, and so.
I didn't either. I didn't.
Tony Davis?
Does John still need to give his financials? Or John?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, we've completed the two agenda items. John, you normally give a summary of where we are to date. Are you prepared to do that? I know normally you send something out before the meeting. If you did, I didn't see it, but I don't, are you prepared? And I know it's a tough time, I know. And I know you plan on conversing, setting up a meeting with the mayor and the majority leader and myself and the council president on the 20th thereabouts of April. Is that still the plan, or do you want to go through? What do you want to do, John? As far as where we are now?
Well, I can just give you a brief update. I emailed everyone the information that would normally be sent out, the narrative update.
You did send that out?
I feel like it's so empty to give you the update through February, which is where we normally would be. Life was pretty normal in February. There really wasn't much to note. Included in my update is I did mention some things regarding the COVID-19. You'll know the story dropped tonight from the county, with their financial concerns. I can read to you what I have, or I can just kind of go through whatever you'd like, but there are obviously some very obvious areas of concern as we transverse through this pandemic. First and foremost, the sales tax. And I should take a step back. I had a chance to speak with the mayor several times. His intention at this point is to gather as much information as he can and come up with a plan, gather information from both the department heads, myself. I would encourage the council to reach out to the mayor as well, to potentially partner with the mayor on that. But in short, there's 4 key areas of concern for myself. Sales tax, which is obvious. We collect, our budget is over $14 million in sales tax, $14.3 million. The county had offered, I had a number of conversations with Bert Goldnick from the county. He had received information from NISAC, the Association of Counties, and their estimates varied quite widely on what the potential losses for sales tax were. We're all concerned. And unfortunately, we don't see the collections for at least a month and a half from when the collections dip. So we're not at the point yet where we've seen any reduction in sales tax. We will start seeing them within the next, I would think within the next 30 days or so. We're not there yet. I mentioned in my memo to the council that every 1% reduction in sales tax would be a roughly $143,000 budgetary loss. So, to give you an example, if sales tax drops 5% for the year, we're looking at $700,000. And it's very preliminary to, I think, to discuss or to project what those numbers are. The county had mentioned 4 to 13% when we talked to them. So that would go, or 3 to 13% for us. It could be like $400,000. It could be over $1 million, but I would expect it to be significant. And that's across the board. Sales tax will be significant. Obviously, as you've had a number of people who've been laid off, they're not working, businesses shut down, or at least temporarily shuttered, hopefully not permanently shut down. We would expect to see not only just sales tax slow coming in, I think you'll see some increase in property tax delinquencies. I think people will fall behind on property tax. The last time we had a recession, we noted some very large increases in our receivables on property tax. And that's almost one of those events that takes time to happen, because from a timing standpoint, this happening in March, the taxes that are due at the end of this month, the first installment's already paid for a lot of people. The second installment's coming up. In a lot of cases, it's already paid in full, but it's a concern even for next year when the 2021 bills go out. What financial status are taxpayers going to be in then? On a more immediate need or concern, the state aid, we get $3 million a year from the state. I'm sure you read or saw the state budget, and there was language in the state budget that allows the state to modify the state budget. So, I read that as having concern about what is our aid funding going to be this year. Included in that was the $3 million that we normally get. My concern is based upon the status of the state and their finances and what they've indicated in their discussions on the budget is, could we face some sort of budgetary cut on state aid in the future? So we don't have any word on that. There's been nothing to tell us that would happen, but I think we should all just be aware that is a possibility of some type of cut there. We don't know what that would be. And then also our retirement bill, that is based upon our budget for this year is just about $3.8 million for the expense. And that bill is in part based upon the returns in the market. Obviously, if you've been paying attention, you know what's happened to the market lately. And their measurement period is March 30th, which wasn't really a great time in the market. So I'm expecting that we're going to get a bump in our retirement bill when we receive it this fall. So those are 4 of my immediate concerns. And then we also have the departmental revenues and expenses, things like programs and parks and rec. We'll have some losses there. I didn't include parking meters. Obviously, if you've driven around town, we got the parking meters bagged up. We're potentially losing, revenue there, or we are losing revenue there. Our interest rates in the bank went from about 2% a year ago to 0.1% is where we're at right now. So it's basically free money. Now we'll save a little bit when we borrow, but we're also losing it on the investment side. So going back to the departments, we've surveyed the departments. We're waiting for all the responses back to gather as much data as we can so the mayor can incorporate that into his plan. But there will be some programmatic things. Obviously, there's been probably a little bit less overtime in the last few weeks. There's probably been less vehicle fuel, but there's going to be some other expenses for preparedness, et cetera. So we're trying to gather all that information. I see Tony has a question.
I was gonna wait for you to finish, John.
That's pretty much towards the end of it. I just wanted to hit on the key areas, so everyone was aware. I think sales taxes, the immediate budgetary item that could have the most impact. Obviously, you have to keep an eye on the state. I think the property tax will lag a little bit, but then the retirement bill and then also, looking forward to next year, what happens with our health insurance bills. So go ahead, Tony.
So John,
Tony Davis.
Tony Davis here. So John, the concerns are, and potential concerns are, decrease in sales tax, decrease in state aid, decrease in property tax, and an increase in retirement payments, right? So in the last couple of days, we've been talking, discussing, and I reiterate what Alderman Patrick O'Reilly is saying, and I mentioned that at the end of Common Council yesterday, and you're our watchdog, you're financial, if you want to use that word, watchdog. And what you're seeing now, should we be holding off on many of the things that we are budgeting or spending on? You weren't there yesterday, which we could have had asked these questions before we passed some of these resolutions. And but in your opinion, what should we be doing?
Well, Tony, it's a good question. I've had the conversations with the mayor, and I know he's looking to put together a plan on what we're going to do. I think it's a good time to collectively have conversations between the council and the mayor's office. I do think that we do have to look at curbing spending. How we get there, I think, has to be a collective decision. And to the extent of what we do with curbing spending, I think should be a collective decision. Obviously, you're hearing from me, I think it's going to be significant. What no one knows is, do we get out of this in 30 days and the economy rebounds back to what it was? I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's going to lag a little bit. That's my personal opinion on what I'm reading. I do think that, we're going to obviously take some short-term major hits on sales tax. I think it'll pick back up, but I think it's not going to get back to the pre-COVID levels very quick. Randy, you had a question?
Yes. So I hear what you're saying about these potential shortfalls, and I've been expecting those myself. At the same time, we do have a pretty an overly positive fund balance. So are these the kind of things where we could use some of that to bring that down to the you've said that it's above the limits that the state usually recommends.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a fallback that we can use, or should we just stay away from that altogether in this kind of a situation?
It's a loaded question.
Thank you.
Yeah, my opinion, my professional opinion is, I don't know if I can equate it to a married couple with 2 jobs, or your own family. You have a job and someone gets laid off. What do? You have money in your savings account. Do you curtail spending and just pull the extra money that you need out of your savings account, or do you try to cut some spending, find some alternative ways to make some money, do whatever you got to do, and if you need to somehow soften the blow or mitigate the blow, you take what you need from the savings account? Listen, if this thing gets so severe that it turns into multi-million dollars, I don't know that the city would be able to cut spending to that level where it wouldn't end up taking hits to fund balance. But I don't think the council or the mayor, and I don't think there's any intention is to entirely absorb this hit from fund balance.
Right. Okay.
Tony Davis?
Steve was before me.
Okay, sorry, Steve? Steve Shabbat?
Yep. I was on mute. So I guess kind of back to Tony's question, and maybe this is part of what the mayor is going to be speaking about, and you're going to be meeting about, and we're going to be meeting about. The conversation came up, a couple times now. Should we start the process of looking at projects that we have initiated but haven't moved forward on? Have we hit that point yet? Or, are we still a ways away from where we're going to start pulling the plugs on projects? Just your opinion.
My opinion? I think the mayor's still trying to collect the data and, make a decision on this. There's a lot of ways to cut spending. You've already named a few of them, whether, you cut new spending, you stop spending money on certain projects. Keep in mind when you're talking about projects, a lot of these projects have grant monies involved that, grants can be sacrificed if you do cut on them or cut them. Some of the grants are time sensitive. And once again, some of the projects are, for a grant that's 100%, a project that's 100% grant funded or 90% grant funded, that might not be the one that you're looking at. But I'm sure the mayor, as he's collecting this data and gathering what information he can, in conjunction with the council, will try to make the best decisions he can. There might be some projects where are completely city taxpayer funded or budgetary funded. I just can't speak for him at this point. I mean, there's a lot of avenues we can go.
Yeah, I mean, we pointed out last night, a lot of these projects are going to put a lot of folks to work too. So, that's going to be good for our economy also. So, I don't think we want to start pulling the plug on everything too quick, because then we're going to put more, potentially more people out of work.
Tony?
And Tony Davis here. And John, a couple things. And you mentioned something about grant sensitive or time things. And that is something that Kirsten would have more information on in regard to if it's not done. Has anybody heard from the state And have they given us extensions to these projects? I mean, I know some projects came up in the last couple of days talking about, the trail that had to be done by March or 2021, somewhere in that time frame. And has anybody heard from the state that they're going to extend these deadlines, which would, then that would be something that would help us out making a determination about some of the spending that we've discussed. Also, is it, again, I believe the other thing is, again, as a watchdog, and I know you're going to have a meeting with the mayor to sit down to say, maybe look at some of these things that we've appropriated to spend on that haven't done it yet, to be able to say, all right, we might have to take another look at that project and put it off, or whatever it might be, that project, that grant or whatever, and until we weather this storm. So I've just, thrown that out there, and I hope all that information is taken into consideration.
Do you want me to respond to that, Tony?
Yes.
At this point, we've reached out to the departments. I don't know that Kristen has looked at this point, extending grants or looking to or pause projects based upon this. I think as more data comes in and from the departments, and we start seeing what some of the effects are, everything you said, I think something that the mayor would take into consideration. Once again, if it's significant, we're going to have to react, and you're going to have to react strongly. What that looks like, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of different areas you can go. There's a lot of ways to cut money, whether it's, holding positions, whether it's retirement incentives. I mean, I've been here 12 years, and I've seen a lot of administrations do things different ways, and where you need to cut spending, and the council usually is very helpful in that and puts out ideas. But yeah, I mean, it could get to the point where even things that are in the 2020 budget, we have to scale back on. I mean, I think that's pretty much a given. If the numbers come in very poorly, sure. But I think the mayor, once again, he's going to put together a plan. He wants to see what some of the data is. He doesn't want to overreact right off the cuff, because some of this is so fluid and it was so drastic that we need to pause for a second, see what information we're gathering, how quickly do we come back and get together a comprehensive plan that is a little more thoughtful.
And when is that meeting that you're going to have that you stated with the mayor?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. This is Andrea Schott. We have talked about setting up a meeting, but we're still waiting for more data. So John had just said, can you wait until this week? So there is no meeting date set up. It's just something that we said after the data is collected, we should get together and kind of come up with a plan so that we could then take it to the council, is what my impression was, right, John, when we talked on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure of the mechanics of, once we meet, obviously we want to have a conversation. The mayor wants time to get together a plan. He's trying to get information from the departments. We've had some responses so far. Some of them are up to their elbows right now with, dealing with the pandemic. But yeah, I think some conversation with, the council's obviously very interested and wants to know what the mayor's plan is. We'll have to have a meeting there or some conversation. But in the meantime, the mayor's looking to put together a plan. I'm sure he'd love the council's input. And if that's a phone call or in-person meeting, or an avenue such as this, that would work.
No in-person meetings, John.
Yeah, well, yeah, not yet.
Well, the key word here, it's uncertainty. Everything is uncertainty. On the downside, it's the uncertainty of the 4 or 5 things you cited, John: sales tax, property tax, state aid, retirement, and other things, ancillary things, parking meters, recreation, interest. These are all shoes in the sense that are about to fall. We don't know when they're going to fall or how quickly they're going to fall. On the other side, the uncertainty is if you know, if things improve, if we come out of this and there's pent up demand that is released and increases sales tax, I mean, we can go on and on with this. Everything's uncertain, and so we have to look at it, you know, almost day by day. The rhythm, the inflection points, they're all changing, and you know, the mayor's going to come up with a plan. It's probably going to be changed 5 or 6 times, but you know, come up with a plan, and then we're going to have to deal with it on a day-by-day basis. I agree with, yeah, just a moment, John. I'm agree with some of my colleagues here, you know, about we've approved some projects, but we may want to put the brakes on them. We're just going to look at it, you know, day by day. Go ahead, John.
Well, you know, Doug, just to build off of what you're saying, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think the losses are going to be significant. You know, the question is it significant versus catastrophic? Those are, you know, that's not information that we have right now. You know, whether it's a, you know, there's a big difference between a 5 and a 15% reduction in sales tax. There's a big difference between a 50% reduction in state aid and 0% reduction. So those are the things we're trying to gather. And, you know, like I said, the mayor wants to come up with a plan that I'm sure is a balanced plan, something that he thinks is responsible, and, you know, not overreactive, but, you know, with due care with the current environment that we're in. So I do think it's a matter of reading the tea leaves and doing, you know, trying to at least react with, you know, we have to react with the data we have now. We know that there's going to be some reductions. I mean, that's plainly obvious. You know, we have parking, we have interest revenue. We know we're going to have a dip in sales tax. You know, we have some uncertainty with state aid and things like that. But, you know, I think the mayor's trying to get more information on, once again, not to keep going back to that, on some of the severity on the other items.
Randy Scott Childers, please.
Hi, Rennie Scott Childers speaking. I'm thinking of 2 times in the past, the recent Great Recession and the American Great Depression back in the 1930s. And in both of those cases, some folks believed that we had to stop spending altogether, had to just draw back, and government couldn't do anything at all. And there was, in a sense, kind of panic to not act. And I think in those cases where Hoover, for example, was president, he didn't act. He didn't help to get the economy going again, believing that somehow people would be able to make it happen. It didn't. And it was only when the federal government stepped in and started to develop programs to bring people back into the workforce, to stabilize the banking system, and things like that, that we saw our way out of the Great Depression. Something similar during the Great Recession. We saw a lot of countries try austerity, which was to stop spending, to try to cut all kinds of spending. And I think in most cases, it was pretty disastrous. So what I'm hoping is that we will remain flexible, we'll remain limber as we look to what we have to do. Sometimes the best way out may be to do the right kind of spending. That doesn't mean just throw money at everything, but it means that we need to really think in terms of a strategy. What kind of spending is the right kind of spending? What kind of cutting is the right kind of cutting? And I think that we should all probably be going back to the 2020 budget and looking very closely at it and thinking very hard about what kind of decisions, what kind of scenarios are out there for us.
Okay, that's a good overview. Thank you, Rennie. Steve Shavit.
Yeah, this is for John. It's probably too soon to tell. How about, I know we get a lot of revenue from the rec department, and I know a lot of things have been canceled, and probably all the, you know, a lot of summer activities are going to be canceled. How's that faring?
It's John again. I spoke with Mary Jo Wiltshire today. I know she was helping Ed Norman with some of their numbers. She was going to reach out to the rec department as well, so I know they're looking at it. We're waiting on that information. I think it's going to be more of an operational hit over there than necessarily a budgetary hit. Keep in mind with, although some of the programs help pay for the full-time employees, there's also a fair amount of seasonal expenses with the parks program and things like that. So while I think it's maybe something significant for those who use the programs, budgetarily, there will probably be some impact, but it's not going to be on the level of these other items we talked about.
All right, probably, maybe not a complete wash, but because if softball's canceled, for example, they don't have to prep fields every day and things like that. So hopefully it'll be kind of a wash.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be other things. I mean, there's going to be, the fact that some of the trucks aren't driving around as much. You might have less fuel cost. You might have less, some less overtime. I mean, I've seen even this process in the payroll. And then there's going to be some additional costs for readiness and things like that. I try to keep my update to the more big ticket items. I think there's a lot of minutia when we start drilling down into the departments. I mean, there's going to be certain things that don't happen that we can't bill for, and then we also don't have the expenses for. In my department, the fees that we collect, there's probably going to be some small hits here and there, but the main one's the sales tax. I mean, we're certainly going to see some fall off in departmental revenues, I would think. I mean, even building permit fees. I mean, we haven't analyzed that yet, but to the extent that there's less building activity going on, you might see it fall off there. I think that's to be expected.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think it's, as we said, there's lots of uncertainty here, things we don't know when it's going to happen, what is going to happen. But I think we need to keep in close contact with you and the mayor, John. I look forward to having this meeting in the near future, whenever it is. When I say then within 10 to 14 days, whenever it can be put together, that Rennie, myself, and Andrea, and you, John, can kind of get together and sound things out and see how's it going, see how these shoes that I said when they begin to fall, the sales tax, the property tax decrease, and so on and so forth. But beyond that, I don't know if there's anything else we can decide upon at this very moment.
I'll certainly continue to keep you posted. If there's anything that you'd like to see, certainly at our monthly meetings, but beyond that, I mean, we're going to be talking more than that, I'm sure. We get basically bi-monthly payments roughly on the sales tax. So we'll see once they start tailing off and seeing what those numbers look like.
When do you expect that to happen, John? When will we actually see reductions in sales tax?
Well, there's usually at least a 6-week delay. I'm going to say
So we're talking May, even into June, huh?
Yeah, let me look. I have a sales tax schedule here, so let me just pull that out. Because the way it's broken down, the sales tax that we get is broken down by whether it's electronic filer, non-electronic filer, and some of it's for different periods. But the first remittance that we get at all for the month of March will be in another week or so. And then we get the bulk of the March collections in May. So we won't have all of March's data until mid-May. And, and by that point, we'll have some of the April collections, but we'll have a collection for March 21st to March 22nd's electronic sales tax filers in another week or so here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that would be the first.
Yeah. Andrea Shutt?
Yeah, John, you had said earlier that you had sent us the financial reports that you typically do, but I'm looking at my email. I don't actually see anything. Did anybody get Get it? No.
Unless
I
it's
don't,
coming from my
No,
outbox.
I didn't see it.
John, can you resend that or send that to us, please?
Sure. I will have to, I apologize.
All right,
Could be
thank you.
stuck in my outbox somewhere.
Okay. Okay. Any other points?
I'll take a look at it.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Any other points of discussion? I would like to raise one, just a technological issue. I had, after 3 nights of no problem getting on to these meetings, I had a big problem tonight. Did anyone else have a problem?
No,
I would suggest
know
that you guys, I would suggest that you try to get on
No.
10 minutes or so in case there's a problem, when we can reach out to Kyle. If you get on at 7:30 or 7:29 and it's a problem, then it's going to be a delay. So if you can try to get on 10 minutes before, if there is a problem, we might be, Kyle might be able to solve
I guess
it
I was
before the
getting
meeting starts.
comfortable after the last 3 nights getting on like that, And tonight, for some reason,
as organizer for the meeting, I have to be in the meeting before anybody else comes in. But I've been trying to log on like 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time. So it gives you a decent sized window to try and get in. Because then you could mute yourself, you could turn the camera off, you could walk around and then come back at 6:30. But I'll try and make sure I'm online between 15 and 20 minutes ahead of time so that anybody could come in then.
okay, so I'm sorry, I myself held up the start of the meeting, but I don't know why, but things happen. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Tony, second, Rennie, all in favor?
Elisa,
1, 2, 3, okay. Carried.
Elisa.
Thank you all.
All right.
All right, good night.
Well, we'll be sending the committee report so you can sign it.
All
I'll
right.
do that tomorrow.
Andrea, do you know off the top of your head when the public safety, because I didn't receive anything in the mail, so to put it in my
When your
calendar.
meeting is?
Yes,
Your meeting is April 22nd.
22nd.
Yes.
Right.
And so I'll make the invite. I'll schedule the meeting on April 15th.
Okay, this is with the mayor and John and,
No,
Well,
this is the
public
public safety, just our committee meeting.
oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Okay.
Tomorrow's laws and rules.
No, laws and rules is a week from today.
Hmm.
Laws and rules is the 15th.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Public safety is the 22nd, and then Steve, community development, I think is the 28th, right? Yeah,
28th for community development,
yes.
okay. Okay,
Okay, and I'll
we
get those,
stand-
they'll
we
have,
stand
the invites will
adjourned.
go out 1 week ahead of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Everybody have a good evening.
Bye.
Stay safe.
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
6 feet. 6 feet. 6 feet.